Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Thursday, July 13th, City of Woodstock Council meeting. This hybrid meeting is being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. The meeting will also be broadcast on Rogers TV. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. And tonight we had no closed session. So I will ask, are there any disclosures of conflict of interest? Councillor Lauder.
I, Councillor Connie Lauder, declare the following potential indirect pecuniary interest. Agenda item number 8A, delegation. Subject matter, Woodstock Nonprofit Board delegation. I have an indirect pecuniary interest in item 8A. I am a member of the Board of Directors for the Woodstock Nonprofit House Board.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Leatherbarrow.
I, Councillor Kate Leatherbarrow, declare the following potential direct pecuniary interest. Agenda item number 14.F.2. Subject matter, minor variance number MV-10-23-262 Wellington Street North. I own a property in the immediate vicinity of the subject property.
Thank you very much. No other conflicts that I'm aware of. Disclosure of new business. There are none. Matters arising from the minutes and the minutes. Councillor Leatherbarrow.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Lauder, that the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on June 15th, 2023 be adopted.
Thank you. Any questions? Concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Next, we have additions to the agenda. Councillor Leatherbarrow.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wheaton, that the following items be added to the agenda. Delegation 8B, Paul Barron, Barron Planning Consulting. Planning item 9B-B23-14-8, ZN 8-23-04-52 and 58 Park Row, and plan item 9C-B23-10-8, 745-188 Oxford Road 17. And bylaw 9613-23, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 8626-10 as amended. ZN 8-22-22 at northwest corner of Juliana Drive and Lampman Place.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns with that? Seeing Councillor Wheaton.
Yes, sorry, I do believe item number 16, notice of motion, is also an addition to the agenda. No? Okay.
Yeah, no decision is made, so then it's not. Thank you, though, for checking. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? None opposed. No presentations tonight, but we do have delegations. So at this point, I'll ask Marianne Silverthorne to come forward from the Woodstock Nonprofit Housing Board. Request for bus stop at 1231 Nellis Street. We'll just ask you just wait for a second. Perfect. Ms. Silverthorne, welcome.
Express Diane Harris's regret. She had an emergency family situation that required her to be absent from the city all day. On behalf of the Woodstock Nonprofit Housing Board of Directors, thank you for the opportunity to express a concern that affects the residents of our most recent build at 1231 Nellis Street East. Each of you has a copy of our letter dated June 12, outlining the difficulty of our residents who may not drive, may have mobility issues, and the barriers they face as they go about their daily life. The nearest bus stop is across the Woodstock and District Developmental Services parking lot at the south side of Bisham Park Drive, where they face an additional incline, preventing access to the bus shelter without getting themselves back to the sidewalk on Lansdowne, making for yet another longer walk. This is a hardship on a good day, but any inclement weather presents an additional complication. As a board, we are well aware that it is impossible for you to meet the needs of all citizens. As a city, accessibility is important, and for these residents who may be disadvantaged for any number of reasons, we ask for staff and council to re-examine the location or the position of some bus stops. We would recommend that the Transportation Department review the location of the bus stops, particularly in this new area of the city where a new residence dedicated to seniors is located. We will endeavor to answer any questions councilors may have. That's I will endeavor, since I'm here alone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Any questions of Ms. Silverthorne? Oh, Councillor Shanberg?
Yeah, from the mayor through to Marion, I just want to sort of point out that the nonprofit housing association are involved with that 10th Street apartment buildings and also 675 Canterbury. I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of work your association does with your chair, Larry Moore, and of course, our member of council, Connie Lauder, who declared a conflict and has of course left the room. But just and Diane Harris as well, from Ingamo and
We are a board of 5. They were all
Yes.
listed in the
Exactly.
letter. Yeah.
Do terrific work for the city of Woodstock. And people, for example, will hear of Indwell often and maybe forget that Indwell comes in from Hamilton to do great work from Woodstock. But you're on the streets in Woodstock all the time, knowing what's going on at your 3 buildings, and more are coming your way. So I just want to congratulate you on that. And I'm certainly in favor of having the buses get down to this new building at 1231 Nellis.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheaton?
Thank you, Mayor Antroni. Do you have a sense of how many people in the building might have a mobility challenge? I know I was there on the day of the grand opening and noticed numerous people either commenting about it or having a device, a scooter, a stroller, a walker. Do you have a sense of a percentage of it? Because it is a building primarily meant for seniors.
It is a seniors building. No, I wouldn't have that information, and I don't know whether we actually have that data or not. We do have certain units that are definitely dedicated to handicapped, and their cupboards and everything are just outstanding. If you haven't seen them, you need to. It's hard to believe. The older I get, I'm thinking I want to install a cupboard that just you pull out the shelves to you. We do have several of those units, but I don't know. And you also need to understand that the building is not full yet. So we are still in a state of flux of getting applications and filling units. So I'm sorry, I don't know that. We could probably ask at our next board of directors meeting, but that's not until September.
But just to follow up, it's not 1 or 2 people.
Oh,
This is
no.
multiple.
And each time I'm there for an event or a board meeting or whatever, there are more and more that you see coming in. And even if it's just the fact that they cannot walk long distances. And I say that because I now find myself in that category, and it's very, very difficult. I know that once they allotted spaces for parking, the first thing was they needed more handicap parking areas. So yes, it's just not 1 or 2 or 3. It's probably, I don't want to even guess because somebody will say, well, Mary Ann said, yeah, so.
Councillor Wismer Van Meer?
Through the chair to Ms. Silverthorne, just a quick question. In your opinion, is a stop kind of at the corner of Lansdowne and Nellis, kind of where WDDS is? Is that kind of an ideal location? Is that what you're thinking? Or like how close are these folks hoping to see this bus come to, just knowing Nellis down towards the apartment might not be the ideal spot?
Well, we never surveyed them. We just listened to their comments. I can only speak as what I heard one say. One said it would be ideal to have the bus stop out front. Well, in an ideal world, we all have our special requests. We know that that's not going to work because one of the reasons it's a dead end street. Now there is a U-turn at the door, But the one where it is now is just far too far away. And particularly when we get to inclement weather, like a day like yesterday, they'd just be home. And I mean, they have to have transportation, any of them who cannot drive themselves, to get to the closest grocery store, which is Sobeys. So in my ideal world, it needs to be, even at the corner of Lansdowne, would be a walk, but it would be closer. Don't quote me that I said that, okay?
It's not that we're recorded or anything. tonight. No.
Or on the whole city heard Marianne say, just put the bus stop out there.
Well, it would be difficult down to get a bus turned around and back out.
And
Obvious, yeah.
we know that and they know that. And when we heard them talking, we said, you know, like, it's not going to happen that it's going to stop at the door.
And actually, I've driven by that location, and WDDS bus stop is a fairly active bus stop as well, so we have to be careful. as well
And in
with that.
presenting this, I have driven there several times to just check out things in the area. And as I indicated, there is quite a incline behind that bus shelter even. So that presents another obstacle once they get there.
Okay, any other questions? Silverthorne? Seeing none, well, please send Diane Harris our thoughts, and I hope everything's okay.
And
Sorry,
thank
she
you
can't be
very
here
much to all of you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. Now I'm looking for a motion on the floor. Counselor Wheaton,
Sorry, didn't mean to leave you hanging there. That Woodstock City Council refer the request from the Woodstock Nonprofit Housing Board for a request for a bus stop at 1231 Nellis Street to staff for a report.
thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Counselor Leatherborough? Discussion? Counselor Schanberg?
Yeah, for the mayor through our engineering department, what would be sort of the stumbling block in passing this tonight to go ahead and do that, to go down that, which is in essence, a city block down at 1231 Nellis, and it's a big roundabout cul-de-sac at the end of the street.
Of course, Mr. Caves, you're welcome tonight. And if there's any difficulties, please, the CIO is willing to answer anything you can.
Through your worship to the counselor. Typically, we do try and avoid cul-de-sac streets. They're counterintuitive to timing and that type of thing. We can review it, and we will have to review the costs associated, impacts, the routes, timing, that type of thing. So we can certainly review it and likely recommend a review of the situation.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I'm thankful to council for asking Mr. Caves a question. That's a tradition now. If you get to be with us. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. I'll let Councillor Lauder have a seat. And next up, of course, we have Mr. Paul Barron, Barron Planning Consulting, planning item 9B, B 23-14-8, etc., 52 and 58 Park Row. Please welcome.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and fellow council members. I'm here on behalf of the landowners for planning items 9B and 9C tonight. The owners have requested that I appear to confirm our support for the staff recommendations and answer any questions. Very brief presentation here tonight, so that's it.
Very nice. For those on here on Monday night, though, there was a good presentation. So is there any questions of Mr. Barron? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for being here, though. No resolution is required as these items are dealt with under consideration of planning reports 9B and 9C. Next up, consideration of planning reports. 9A. Mr. Gilbert, welcome.
Thank you. This zone change application seeks to increase the permitted gross floor area for a banking institution on the subject property. The property is designated regional commercial node and has a current cap of 511 square meters for a financial institution. Through the applications, the applicant proposes to construct a new building for another banking institution with a square footage of 6,500 square feet. So the purpose of this application is just to increase the floor cap to account for the existing bank or credit union, which occupies about half of the permitted space, and then increase the floor area for the balance. As noted, the applicant did provide a retail market impact analysis that concluded that there is sufficient demand for the space through population growth in the city and the broader area, and no impact to the downtown is expected. As such, staff recommend approval of the application.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, looking for a motion. Councillor Lauder,
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the application for zone change for lands described as part lot 18, concession 2, East Oxford, parts 12 and 14 or 41R 8707, City of Woodstock, to amend the provisions of the Special Regional Commercial Zone C6-4 to increase the maximum permitted gross floor area for a financial institution. And further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
thank you. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Any other questions? Of staff or the planner, since he's still here? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, 9B. Mr. Gilbert?
Thank you. This is an application for consent and zone change to allow for the development of 11 townhouse dwelling units. The lot to be severed would contain 5 townhouse dwellings that would front on Park Row, and the retained lands would have 6 townhouse dwellings, 6 units accessed by a private lane to the rear of the 5 units. Staff note that the proposed lot fabric is consistent or is not out of character with the lot fabric in the area on Park Row, which has a lot of unique lot sizes and shapes. And there's a number of townhouse units in the area. The proposal does meet with the minimum density for low density residential units. As well, it'll provide an alternative housing form. As such, staff recommend support of the severance application and approval in principle of the zone change.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner? Councillor Schanberg.
Not sure if it's a question or not, maybe just a comment. I actually like the idea that the 5 street facing the units, even though they're townhouses, will be sold individually. And the 6 at the back will be income property for the developer. And I think that's a good idea because it's entry-level housing, but it's also a mix of entry-level housing between somebody who wants to purchase and somebody who would just would like to rent in that area.
Any other questions or comments of the planner right now? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Tate, and seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject property subject to the following conditions, which are 8 and ZN 8-23-04, that Woodstock City Council approve in principle the zone change application submitted by Oxford Builders, whereby the lands described as part lots 9 and 10, Plan 86, City of Woodstock, are to be rezoned from residential zone 1 to special residential zone 3 to facilitate the development of 11 townhouse units on 2 separate lots. 1 lot containing 6 units, 1 lot containing 5 units, and to support the severance of those lots. And further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Any questions of staff or the planner before I call the vote? Okay, seeing none, All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you. Mr. Gilbert, 9C.
And this last application is application for consent to create a vacant residential lot for a future plan of subdivision. The retained lands will contain the existing single attached dwelling, which will be retained by the applicants. There are active applications for official plan amendment, zone change and subdivision for the separate parcel. The proposal will maintain or will implement appropriately the secondary plan for this area as it allow for Leslie Street to be submitted or constructed through the property, provide appropriate access, and staff have no concerns with the application, provided there's a condition that the lands be rezoned so that the severed lands cannot be developed until such time that the subdivision plan is approved.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Any questions of the planner? Sorry. Seeing none, look for a motion. Counselor Shanberg.
The Woodstock City Council advised the Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject property subject to the following 8 conditions. And further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder. Counselor Leatherborough. And discussion or questions? Counselor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I'm just pleased once again, it seems like every council meeting or every planning meeting, we are seeing some infilling, and I'm pleased to see that continue, that we see residents and developers with a vision to increase density within our city and to create housing opportunities that we know are so desperately needed. And so it's encouraging to see that these aren't one-offs, that we're seeing them week after week after week.
Yes, 100% agree. This is something that really proud of this council is looking at and recognizing the need for and doing what we can with the developers here in the city. Looking for any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Now, I do want to kind of note out, I'm sure councilors have noticed, I changed things up a little bit tonight. I apologize. I did mean to say that beginning. That from now on, I'm going to ask the planner to present the planning ahead of time. So Councillor Wheaton and I are used to that, and Councillor Tate from the county. When I did the county meeting, I really liked the flow of that. I thought that made sense. So I apologize for not saying something ahead of time. And if council doesn't object, I'd like to continue with that. And we'll, of course, follow up after they present with the motions like we did tonight. Okay. For those watching at home, if you're wondering what was off a little bit there, that was the difference. We just switched things around a little bit. Next up, we have consideration of correspondence. Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Leatherborough. Whereas the homelessness crisis is taking a devastating toll on families and communities, undermining a healthy and prosperous Ontario, and that council accepts that the responsibility to address these challenges rests with community stakeholders, partners, and residents, as well as federal and provincial governments and agencies. Whereas the city of Woodstock recognizes the challenges of mental health, addictions, specifically opioids, and homelessness are complex issues that have a significant and detrimental impact on the residents of the city of Woodstock and surrounding areas within Ontario. Whereas addressing and responding to these issues has placed extreme stress on all levels of municipal and non-municipal programs and services, including various not-for-profit organizations and provincially funded health services with the city of Woodstock and surrounding areas. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Woodstock call on the federal and provincial governments to act on the following 8 measures. Acknowledge that homelessness in Ontario is a social, economic, and health crisis. 2, commit to ending homelessness in Ontario. 3, work with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and a broad range of community, health, Indigenous, and economic partners to develop, resource, and implement an action plan to achieve this goal. 4, create a multi-sectoral task force to guide development of a robust provincial opioid response plan that will ensure necessary resourcing, policy change, and health and social system coordination. Number 5, expanding access to opioid and agonist theory of opioid use disorder through a range of settings, example, mobile outreach, primary care, emergency departments, rapid access and addiction medicine clinics, and a variety of medication options. Number 6, providing a long-term financial commitment to create more affordable and supportive housing for people in need, including people with substance use disorders. Number 7, addressing the structural stigma and harms that discriminate against people who use drugs, through provincial support and advocacy to the federal government to decriminalize personal use and possession of substances and ensure increased investments in health and social services at all levels. And number 8, increase investments in evidence-informed substance use prevention and mental health promotion initiatives that provide foundational support for the health, safety, and well-being of individuals, families, and neighborhoods, beginning from early childhood. And further, that a copy of this motion be sent to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, the Minister of Health, the Minister of the Solicitor General, the Minister of Finance, Chief Medical Officer of Health, Oxford MPP Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MP Arpan Kana, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all 144 Ontario municipalities.
Thank you for that. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. It is a lengthy motion. There's a lot of content there, and that was somewhat intentional. There are 2 pieces of correspondence that were brought forward to us that originated, or I first saw them through the County of Oxford, where we discussed them a couple of weeks ago and passed unanimous support for communicating with the province and federal government that homelessness, mental health, and opioid challenges are a crisis in our community, and that no one entity can go it alone. The evidence and the data supports that local rates of all opioid-related harms, including ER visits, hospitalizations, and deaths, have continued to rise since 2016, with a steep increase between 2019 and 2022. We are much higher than the provincial average. ER visits are 1.5 times higher than the provincial rate in 2021, and hospitalizations are 2 times the provincial rate. The rate of deaths increased faster than ER visits and hospitalizations, more than doubling between 2019 and 2021. The local data demonstrates that a comprehensive approach is needed to address opioid-related harms. And we know that we see weekly deaths right here in our own community. Prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and safe community initiatives are significant resources that are needed in our community. We've just talked about creating housing units. Homelessness is at an all-time crisis, and it often goes hand in hand with substance abuse and misuse, but it's not exclusively. The wait list for housing is years long. The list grows even as new units come on stream that we've just talked about tonight, new units for seniors. So this motion makes some very specific asks of our provincial and federal partners. Taking access to address homelessness, mental health, and addiction will cost all levels of government in the short term, but I do believe it will save in the long term on healthcare costs, economic impact, justice lags in the system, and public health initiatives. And so I look to my peers to communicate support for communicating this to the provincial and federal government.
And as seconder, Councillor Leatherborough, would you like to speak to this?
I think Councillor Wheaton did a just job, so I will just echo and thank her for bringing this forward.
Thank you. I just want to say before I ask to the floor, though I certainly support the majority of this, I do have a problem just with one item. That would be number 7. It is a crisis, there's no question. I'm just not sure decriminalizing drug use is something I could do myself. So, but in saying that, I'll certainly put it to the floor, and I apologize. Councillor Tate, sorry.
Through the chair, I won't be supporting the motion for exact that reason. Item number 7, I cannot support decriminalizing drugs and personal drug use. There is a motion somewhat similar to this that we brought back last term. I believe Councillor Lauder actually wrote the motion up. We've sent a number of motions to the different levels of government, and nobody seems to be paying any attention. I think the most important thing we need to remember here is we do have a shelter that, the Sean Shapton is here tonight. Operation Sharon has done wonders. We have some blocks, at the county for it to being even more successful. I think the biggest thing that we can do as counselors here in Woodstock is advocate at the county to give Mr. Shapton Operation Sharing the tools he needs because he has shown to be successful. I'm all for sending information off to the different levels of government, but honestly, they don't do anything. They look at them and they just throw them away. I think we have to, it's the same thing yesterday with another delegation that came, we can talk about it, but you have to do something. So I think as county councilors, the three of us, we advocate for Operation Sharing. And I know my fellow councilors, city councilors all follow county council, so they're aware of what's going on. So I think it's very important, but I mean, all of us have done a lot of background and research, and this went on the last term because it got out of control, and everything points to not decriminalizing, and communities that have done it have reversed it. It's the same with the meth clinics. People that were once big supporters of it have now realizing that they should not have done that. So what happens is, one of the issues that happens is they go in where they can get the legal drugs and then they sell them. So it's the same with the meth. They go in, they get it, whatever treatment they need, and then they sell it to the kids. So there's a long way to go. And as we've said numerous times, if there was an easy fix, everybody would have it fixed because it's getting worse. But I can't support it just for that one item. And I do stress that we need to advocate really strong at the county for Operation Sharing and the work that Sean Shapton's doing.
Thank you, Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. I support what Councillor Tate is saying, and I also agree with item number 7 there, that as you have said, I cannot support that in this resolution. I know that we need a lot of help, we need a lot of support, and we have to advocate all we can. And I believe in helping Operation Sharing, that are doing a wonderful job. And let's just put our work into the support for them. So I can't, with that number 7 in there, I can't support that. Thank you.
And Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Ancioni. Just by way of explanation, the 8 items came from a combination of recommendations out of the correspondence from the county and also from the ALPHA, the Ontario Provincial Association for Public Health. So it was a mix of recommendations. I did run them by staff. And I am more than willing to make the amendment of removing number 7 if that is a stumbling block. I feel it's important to the whole of the motion is much greater than that one part, in my opinion. More than willing to make that an amendment of removing number 7 if the seconder would agree, if that would be more comfortable for council to support.
So if we approach that as a friendly amendment, would any objections to that? Assuming, of course, Councillor Leatherborough's seconder, you are comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll have an amended motion, if that's okay with the clerk, removing item number 7. If there's no objections, seeing none, then we'll do that. Okay, any other discussion? Councillor Leatherborough?
Through your worship, I appreciate the feedback for both different perspectives around the horseshoe. And that was my first thought once we started to focus on number 7 and the language. There's still so much important information within this. And I know Councillor Tate said correspondence doesn't really go anywhere, but we'll keep knocking on doors and sending it to them, because I do think it's important, and it's really signals to community members I've talked to as well for various topics that we are actively, maybe I'll speak for an area municipality councillor, that we're actively working up that chain to say, we're here and we want to represent our residents and we want to help our community thrive. So really happy with this friendly amendment. And those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I do agree as well. I'll continue to speak with the province and federally every time I can. Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, since Councillor Leatherborough mentioned the word language, I do have difficulties with a couple of terminologies in number 5, actually, the way it ends with a variety of medication options. To me, that's very ambiguously and too far wide open as far as what could be permitted or what might be permitted as far as some sort of a rehabilitation process. And the other word is primary care. To me, that's too blasé. The rest of the number 5, I can certainly live with, but I have problems with those terms in number 5.
Counselor Leatherborough?
Through your worship, if Counselor Shanberg, could you just elaborate what you find challenging with that language? I'm just not understanding.
Well, to me, honestly, be a dependence on what you might think would be a variety of medication options to hopefully solve or at least assist in helping an opioid crisis in the province of Ontario, and which is obviously in the city of Woodstock as well. To supply a variety of medication options, to me, is going down a slope I would not want us to see. And in fact, to me, it almost reads like you're going to be legalizing a medication or giving people an alternative medication to the medication they're already on as a method of getting off an opioid crisis.
Counselor Leatherborough?
So just to follow up, and not to specifically target Counselor Shanberg, I understand what you're saying, but I do think that that is just opening for a healthcare professional. Like when I think of women who suffer from postpartum depression, there's a long list of medication. So I would not want to limit anybody depending on each individual case. So I'm not disagreeing with you fully. I'm just saying in terms of what medical professionals or therapists or psychologists could potentially help an individual could be very different depending on the person. So I do know specifically with postpartum depression, there's a variety of things that can be prescribed to get one to be in a better place.
If I may, I'll tend to agree with you that I think we let the doctors and pharmacists worry about what a variety of medication looks at. I don't think as counselors, we need to get into those weeds at all, but Counselor Tate?
Through the chair, I will support the motion with number 7 out, and I didn't mean to say don't send the correspondence. Send the correspondence, but I think it's really important that we here need to advocate at the county that we need more help over at operation sharing, because I think there's some stumbling blocks there, and we have a chance here in Woodstock and Oxford County to make a big difference with what's going on, and there's some issues. So yes, send everything we can to them. Flood them with documents, but we do have something here that we can tangibly do something.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? No, we do have a counselor made some suggestions. Do we want to investigate that at all, or do I call the vote? I'm going to call the vote removing number 7 as stated, if that's okay with everyone, and we'll see how that goes. And with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. So that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council support the resolution received from the town of Petrolia regarding the reinstatement of previous legislation that permitted municipalities to apply for and retain surplus proceeds from tax sales in their jurisdiction. And further, that this resolution be circulated to the town of Petrolia, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and the Housing, and the Ministry of Finance and the Ontario Municipal Tax and Revenue Associations, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and our MPP, Ernie Hardeman.
Thank you. Now, would you like to speak to your motion?
Do you need a second?
Oh, yeah, there was not a seconder. Can I have a seconder, please? Counselor Leatherborough. Thank you. Now, would you like to speak to your
Yes.
motion? Thank you.
Having been the tax collector, I am familiar with this. A public tax sale is a very burdensome process into the municipality, investing a considerable amount of time and expense for the potential sale. I submitted this resolution requesting support, calling for reinstatement of previous legislation that municipalities apply for and retain surplus proceeds from a tax sale. I think I only had to do one that we had to sell. And it is a very onerous job and lots of follow-up and lots of talking to people and trying to get the payments out. So I really think that municipalities should get any benefit out of any proceeds that might be available. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Next up, we have 10C. Looking for a motion, Councillor Tate, second by Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the request for the Woodstock Curling Club to post promotional signs for the Learn to Curl program for 2 weeks commencing on August 27th, 2023, subject to staff approval.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, I certainly wish them well. That's an ongoing program they do there, and I thank them for looking for approvals and staff awareness of where those signs are going to be. So we encourage everyone to do that when you're holding an event. And with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Next up, Mr. Shigell, noise exemption request. Looking for a motion? Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the noise exemption request for September 14th, 2023 from 6 to 10 p.m. for a private function at 99-1 Edinburgh Drive, Woodstock.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder on the motion? Councillor Wismer Van Meer, discussion? Councillor Leatherborough.
Just a comment. I did look and it is on a Thursday, so I would kindly tell this group to let their neighbors know because school will be back in session. But that's just all I have to add about this, and congratulations on this celebration.
Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Almost an echo off of what Councillor Leatherborough said, and maybe just a question. I'm not sure who I directed to, but are they required to let their neighbors know of this happening? Is there any kind of procedures that they do have to follow through prior to this event and letting them know that they do have this exemption, just so that no one's getting phone calls in the event that it happens?
Your worship, Councillor Wismer Van Meer, there is nothing that requires the individual to contact the neighbors. It would just be good neighbor policy. So there's nothing in the procedures at this point that would require that. The noise bylaw itself, with respect to this kind of noise, music, isn't restricted to any particular time. It's just if it's heard in an adjacent house, then it becomes a violation. But generally, other types of noises in the noise bylaw, power equipment, that kind of thing, is permitted until 10 p.m.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. And I do want to say thank you actually for the resident to come forward and letting not only city know for the sake of bylaw and everybody else for calls, but then we're aware of it. So thank you. Next up, we have Cycles of Life for Supportive Transitional Living. Looking for a motion. Councillor Schadenberg, second by Councillor Tate.
The Woodstock City Council approve the in-kind donation request for Cycles of Life for supportive transitional housing for their Fill the Bus campaign to use the city bus and driver for the day in question, which is Saturday, August 12th.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Next up, 10F, 2023 Downtown Woodstock Summer Street Fest. An amendment. Counselor Leatherborough,
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council refer the request regarding an amended street closures for 2023 downtown Woodstock's Summer Street Fest to the bylaw section of the agenda.
thank you. Looking for a seconder on that. Counselor Lauder. Discussion. Counselor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, I was wondering if Mr. Locke from Public Works could just speak to this change of plans for the street closure for Street Fest, which is less than 2 weeks away, just for public knowledge, that would be appreciated.
Sure. Through your worship to the councilor's question. So the previous plan that's happened in past years couldn't be executed this year due to the construction in the area. So staff worked with the organizers to come up with the plan in front of you today. And I expect that going forward, it would be relooked at next year and likely revert back to the existing plan. But with the construction in the area, it just wasn't possible to have the same closures as in the past.
Thank you, Counselor Leatherborough, and I will remind council that and though she's hiding in the corner, Ms. Jarvi is here. So if there's something we need to call her up, we will. Counselor Leatherborough.
So through your worship, just to that point, I was going to say thank you to Carrie Jarvie for communicating to the business owners from Wellington to Beale. So for just the public's knowledge and my peers, it'll no longer be closed from Wellington to Beale for these construction reasons. So those businesses will still be open and there will be some shifting. I think some other businesses across Dundas are trying to just boost up advertisement for them. It's a bit of a bump in the road, no pun intended, but Street Fest is still going to be a smashing success. So thanks to Carrie Jarvie and Dwayne Kumla Thomas for the communication that they've done over the last week. It's been helpful with this minor issue. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll certainly echo that. Counselor Schadenberg.
Just a question, not sure who will answer. it. Maybe Carrie Jarvie would be the one that answer it, but I know Southgate Center does the car show on the Sunday, do they not? Does the car show actually continue all the way until 5 p.m. or does it wrap up, say, at 3 p.m.? I hate to keep that road closed till 5 if the car show is over at 3.
She's giving me the fingers. Fingers, I said, of 3.
Through your worship to Councillor Schadenberg, the car show does go till 3. We do the road closure to 5 to give them time to clear up the streets. So because Public Works likes to go through and make sure it's had a good clean before we let cars back through.
And I will be judging the car show again this year, so I'm excited. for that.
Fantastic. We're
Yes.
excited for it.
Any other questions? Counselor Schadenberg.
Yeah, just sort of Carrie, don't ask me to be a judge. I don't know the difference between a Camaro and a Corvette.
I do, for the record.
I would hope.
Any other questions or comments before I call the vote? Thank you for coming up. Seeing none? All those in favor? None opposed. And again, we do apologize. We really do wish there was something we can do for all those businesses affected. And we will do everything we can to direct as much traffic down there, realizing you will be open. And please do, and encourage everybody watching at home to go for a walk and keep going down Dundas Street. Not only that weekend, but every weekend. Next up, staff presentations. At this point, I will ask Ms. Reed. Welcome. And Jessica Benjek Wateris?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, great. It's already up there. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Accioni and members of council. As mentioned, my name is Mary Reed, Director Curator of the Woodstock Art Gallery, and I'm joined here with Jessica Benjak Waitrose, Head of Collections, who will walk us through the gallery's new digital strategy and top recommendations. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to lead us through.
Thank you, Mary. As per the accompanying report to council, the Woodstock Art Gallery applied for and received funding from the Digital Access to Heritage Grant. This allowed the gallery to put out an RFP to find a consultant who could assist us in writing a digital strategy. With the pandemic, the gallery was forced to close its doors temporarily and shift to virtual programming.
During that time, the gallery reevaluated and restructured programming to serve the community with a virtual model. Now that we have implemented this digital presence, it is crucial to continue with digital initiatives as we have returned to in-person programming to offer a hybrid model, both an in-person and a virtual presence. Given the gallery's finite resources, we emphasize building digital infrastructure and resources parallel to the strategic plan that was developed for 2021 to 2026. Once the RFP was posted, Bruce Wyman was hired to spearhead the project, partnering with Corey Timpson of Corey Timpson Design. Corey Timpson was the one I originally reached out to because of the webinar the Ontario Museums Association held when he presented the digital strategy intention through application. The process for creating the digital strategy included remote interviews with staff members alongside document, content, and collections database reviews. We performed a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis to identify areas where digital efforts could enhance the gallery's strategic plan. Goals and objectives led to specific projects and tactics. Along the way, the consultant offered guidance and understanding in the approach to digital technologies, fostering a spirit of learning and growth. Gallery staff were involved every step of the way to ensure that immediate needs were addressed and to determine an appropriate scale for digital presence for the gallery to attain. Involving staff at each crucial stage strengthened the digital strategy and cultivated a model for future application. At the center of it all, the gallery's permanent art collection is its core function. Having a robust online presence for the art collection attracts visitors and serves as a foundation for content and is a valuable community resource. While some of the collection has been digitized, there is still much more work to be completed and will require several years to catch up and continue as an ongoing effort into the future. The gallery also uses an online publishing platform to create digital content for exhibits, the digital tour guide app. We see an excellent opportunity to continue this effort by creating audio and collections related materials to accompany exhibits and other programming. The gallery also must continue to update digital outputs on the website and social media, as this will allow the gallery to extend its regional presence. By placing a greater emphasis on evaluating digital efforts over time and building better reliance on digital analytics to know what works for the gallery and what doesn't work, allows the gallery to be responsible stewards. As a living document, this digital strategy is to be revisited and revised periodically in order to continue our digital efforts. For digital goals, the first is to establish and maintain core digital resources. Having a robust digital infrastructure, including a well-maintained collections information, digital content, and a user-friendly website. This allows staff and visitors to access various information resources, significantly streamlining future digital efforts and initiatives. Second, to develop digital content capabilities for experimentation. The gallery should invest in developing and nurturing digital content capabilities through experimentation and creative expression, but at a reasonable scale because of the size of staff. Third, refine the digital footprint for Woodstock Art Gallery. This means that the gallery should optimize its website for search engines, engaging social media platforms, and utilizing content marketing strategies. And fourth, develop digital decision-making tools. This can include analytics software for tracking visitors' behavior, instruments for measuring impact of new experiences, and platforms to manage and analyze feedback. To make the digital strategy possible, the main recommendation is to add a full-time digital project coordinator to the gallery staff to complement work across various digital initiatives, supporting multiple departments and enabling timely project completion. The position's three primary focus areas, as currently conceived, are collections management support, which would be approximately 65% of the time. This primary focus involves our largest digital initiative, which includes digitizing the remaining collection, adding new content to individual records, and creating new collections records to ensure the completeness of the collections management system. Ideally, this work would also cover secondary information, such as details about the artists, diversity, individual works, cultural background, Canadian census demographic context, past exhibit material, related educational material, and programming records. Secondly, digital tour guide support and development. This would be approximately 25% of the time. Collaborating with the education staff, the digital project coordinator could develop the next iteration of app and kiosk-based experiences for various exhibits. By building on the initial work with the tour guide platform, audio tours, extended information, and content from the previously mentioned collections work, the digital project coordinator would create new offerings for visitors. This role should also include developing accessibility resources for any new material presented digitally. And third, digital standards and metadata oversight, which would be approximately 10% of the time. While working on the collections data and content for the tour guide platform, ensuring consistent metadata standards and vocabularies is crucial for future project utility. Developing new ways to describe content should anticipate future use to avoid refactoring already completed work in later years. Though this can be exacting work, it helps to create a more robust digital foundation. I will now turn it back to Mary.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And as mentioned in the report to council, much of this work that was listed above was previously undertaken by our communications coordinator, but it sat outside of her regular communications duties. They were more like other duties as assigned. So with the move of the position of the communications coordinator over to corporate services, we're learning quite quickly that these tasks do need to continue so the gallery does not lose that precious momentum as we begin to move out of the very detrimental pandemic. So all in all, the digital project coordinator offers the necessary support for staff to accomplish the proposed efforts in the digital strategy, while maintaining current workloads and ongoing initiatives to provide for the future growth of the gallery and its important service to the citizens of Woodstock and Oxford County. And while I have council's attention, I do want to acknowledge the hard work of Jessica, our head of collections. She joined us in June of 2022 on a temporary contract. And although it's very bittersweet, I am very pleased to announce that she's been able to secure full-time employment as the new curator of the Museums of Burlington. And her last day with the gallery will be this coming Saturday at our open house. In the short-term time with us, Jessica has proven to be a vital asset to the gallery, accomplishing many important projects in addition to the impressive digital strategy. And on behalf of the advisory board and staff of the Woodstock Art Gallery, I want to wish Jessica very well in her new role and sincerely thank her for her significant contribution to the gallery. With that said, the gallery is now down 2 key staff positions, and with the 4th floor development on the horizon and a staff complement of only 5 full-time people, which includes myself, I am very concerned about the gallery staff as well as my own personal capacity and ability to continue to operate the gallery at the current level of service that is expected and required. And I'm hoping that City Council will help in relieving some of this pressure. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Councillor Lauder.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank Mary for this presentation that's been prepared, and wish Jessica all the best luck on her new position. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also say thank you so much, Jessica, for all the added value you gave to the gallery, and congratulations and wish you the best. Thank you. Okay. No resolution is required as this item is dealt with under special committee and advisory task force reports, which is item 15A for those watching here in chambers and those at home. We do not have any mayor's reports or councillor reports tonight, but we do have some department reports. Administrative services, 14A1, statement of revenue and expenditures. Looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Leatherborough, seconded by Councillor Lauder.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council receive the statement of revenue and expenditure and the statement of capital expenditures for the period ending June 30th, 2023 as information.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Lauder?
Yes, thank you. I have one question through to Mr. Connors. On the fair program, there's $30,000, which we have put in for the budget, and I noticed there has been nothing spent out of that. Is that just some posting that has to be changed, or is it not being used?
Your worship, through the councilor's question, That is just a late posting. I did have staff run some numbers on this and currently we have 25,500 that is the total that's been applied for. And that's covering 63 individuals or families.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that it's being, there's been an uptake in that. So, and just another comment that I noticed that a lot of our camp programs, at least most of them, with the Parks and Recreation, with museum and with the art gallery, they're all over 50% of the budget, the revenue. So that's great that there's all of these young people going to be out and having fun, and I see them out in the yards, and it's really great to see that. So thanks to all the people that looking after those camps. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? None opposed, carried. Next up, we have engineering, asphalt resurfacing and surface asphalt tender awards. Looking for motion, Councillor Tate.
Just a question before we get to that. Can we move 15A up? Because we have two staff members that are waiting for that. We have a long agenda before that, if it's okay with the rest of council.
I certainly have no problem with that. Is there any objections from council?
I mentioned when she was up there and I
15A. Okay, so with that, we'll go to 15A. Councillor Lauder,
I'll move that Woodstock City Council, just a minute here, received the Woodstock Art Gallery's digital strategy report, and further that the Woodstock City Council approves the Woodstock Art Gallery's digital strategy report main recommendation to hire a full-time digital project coordinator to ensure the business continuity and continued growth of the gallery's operation.
thank you. Looking for a seconder, Councillor Leatherborough. Discussion?
I can speak to that. The gallery was successful in receiving the grant for this project and is well underway and to great success. It would be a setback if this was left for a few months. The momentum would be lost if leaving this to hire a person after the revenue budget was approved in 2024. Quite a few months of work would be left undone. With the present staff and shortage of staff, I think that it warrants a person in this position.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, I didn't have any questions for Ms. Reed because I thought this was going to be later in the evening, but sometimes I like to just write down quotes from the actual report. So what stood out to me, fully supportive of this, by the way, but what stood out to me was during COVID-19, the Woodstock Art Gallery was forced into the digital realm in providing service to our community. And Councillor Lauder had just mentioned this, but February 9th, 2022, WAG was awarded a 33,000 little bit plus grant from the Department of Canadian Heritage to help the organization carry out its activities under the museum's assistance program, digital access to heritage components. So as a business owner too, through the pandemic and pivoting and coming out, there is great pressure on being both available online and in person. So those are my reasons why I'll be supporting this, and also just those things stood out to me within the report. So thank you to Mary Reed.
Thank you. Councillor Tate.
Through the chair, I will also be supporting it. There's quite a history with the art gallery, and I don't need to go into it, but since Ms. Reed has taken over, it's done amazingly well. I'm sorry, I have to point it out every time, but she has made it what it is. And the grant writing we cannot do without. And the improvements she's made and the grants that she's been able to get have been amazing. So I fully support this because I know she would not ask if she didn't desperately need it. So I support it.
Thank you. I'll also echo that if I can, Councillor Tate, that Mary Reed and all your staff are doing phenomenal, and please continue because you've got some big fans there and I actually love going in and seeing everything, and got to do a quick plug for my favorite event of the year of Taste of Art. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you. Okay, we will jump back then. Thank you, Councillor Tate, for bringing that forward. To engineering of 14B1. Councillor Tate, second by Councillor Shanberg.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approves an additional 200,000 from asphalt resurfacing to be financed from the asphalt reserve, and further that Woodstock City Council award the tender for the 2023 annual asphalt program to Permanent Paving Limited in the amount of 2,199,000 inclusive of HST.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Shanberg?
Yeah, from the mayor through to Adam Cave, who's of course joining us for the first time in the engineering department here tonight. What streets would be involved in this project for 2023 still, which is basically, maybe you can explain that as well, basically just a resurfacing of these streets, not sewers and water mains, et cetera.
Through your worship to the councillor, this year's contract includes a variety of roads there. Conestoga Road, Hiawatha Road, Mohican Drive, Nescapi Street, Knowles Drive, O'Rourke Place, Nellis Street, from the Nesbit East Leg to Springbank Avenue, Nellis Street from Lansdowne to the cul-de-sac, Clark Street North from Dundas to Nellis, Clark Street South from James Street to Dundas Street, East Park Drive from Francis Street just south of Walter Street, Henry Street from Wellington Street to Finkel Street, and Pembers Pass from Mill Street to Sales Drive. So those streets will be receiving just asphalt rehabilitation. No minor underground work associated with catch basin adjustments, that type of thing. Additionally included is paving surface asphalt in the streets that were reconstructed as part of last year's program. Beale Street, Canterbury Street, Huron Street, and Park Row. And additionally, there's some paving included in the Commerce Way Business Park to include the development over there. Commerce Way from Beards Lane to Innovation Way, and Beards Lane from Commerce Way to the cul-de-sac.
I'm guessing that answered your question, Councillor Shanberg. Well done. Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. To the engineering department. What kind of timeline does it take to complete these kind of projects? And I only ask that because I think I heard you say Clark Road, which is very much a school zone. Is that likely to be completed before school resumes in September?
Through your worship to the councillor, the contractor is going to get going as soon as possible, and those priority zones will be hopefully the first ones that they do. Projects like that, they're not overly invasive, I would say, and traffic still flows through the work zone from time to time. So like I say, they'll prioritize the ones that need to be completed sooner rather than later.
Good. Any other questions? Well, there you go. That wasn't so bad. Actually, I guess I got to call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Now you can get to work. Next up, we have the vacant building registry bylaw. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council refer the report regarding vacant building registry to the bylaw portion of the agenda.
Seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion. Councillor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, I'm really excited about this bylaw. This is something that I believe came out of our strategic planning realignment workshop. And as a business owner downtown, which I shared in the workshop, we had a hard time getting insurance because of surrounding buildings. There are fire hazards, which the fire chief we brought that into conversation as well. So I'm just really happy to have some type of system as well as a payment to hold people accountable, because we want buildings and surrounding buildings to be safe. So I'm just really excited about that. And again, citing from the report, there was note traditionally, the city has addressed issues associated with vacant buildings on a complaint-driven basis. And I am always biased for action, so I'm very happy to see us being proactive.
Counselor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I totally support this bylaw. I think that it gives some teeth to following up with vacant buildings and sometimes absentee landlords. I'd personally be in favor of adding a 0 to some of these numbers to incentivize vacant building owners to rehabilitate and reoccupy some of these buildings. But I'm pleased to see this as a very first step.
As am I. Did I see a hand up over there? Counselor Wismer Van Meer. You got to put it up higher.
I said I need to get a flag. Just a general comment. I think it's very much in line with what Councillor Leatherborough and Wheaton have said, but as a resident of this city for my entire life and seeing what has happened in our downtown over the years, and seeing some of those buildings staying vacant for as long as they have. And this is something I think that's been talked about. So to Mr. Wallace and everybody that was behind this, I'm with Councillor Leatherborough, and I'm really excited to see this. And I really hope that there is some incentives to start seeing some of these buildings that we do, as councillors, see many complaints about and hear many comments about. And hopefully this will start to push some action as well.
I think Counselor Lauder, I think you had your hand up first.
I just have to echo what the rest are saying. I'm so pleased to see this. It's been a long time coming, I think, and it's just the greatest thing. So even though it's going to cost some people some money, maybe they'll get it rented or fix them up and do something with them. So that I'm glad that this has come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Schadenberg.
Yeah, and reading this registry bylaw, the only question I had was maybe a clarification item on 4.4, where it said to make sure that the property is secured against unauthorized entry within 24 hours of regaining the access. The reason I point that out is I knew of a family or a couple on Kensington who for about 3 years had a hole in the roof of the neighbor's house. So it would be difficult for a person to get access to the property, but lots of animals got access to the property, and they're right next door. For literally for 3 years, they had a house that had a fire in it that was sitting there boarded up except for a hole in the roof. So I would like to see that the when you say secured against unauthorized entry, that would be for people and for animals to be for the building to be secured.
Any other comments or questions? Well, for those that listened to, I think it was actually the Hope FM radio interview I did. I was quite excited. We got talking about this, that I'm really excited by this as well. I think this is a step in the right direction to not only make us aware of what buildings are vacant, but also another encouragement to make sure they're filled as soon as possible. So with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Oh, actually, my apologies. We're actually moving that to the bylaw portion of the agenda. So we have to vote to move it, correct? Yes. So all those in favor, my apologies. All those in favor to move it. All right. Thank you. It is moved to the bylaw section. Next up, Pattullo Ave Industrial Site. Looking for a motion. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve additional funding to complete work at the Pattullo Avenue industrial site in the order of $4,600,000 from the Industrial Land Reserve.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Wheaton. Discussion. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
We have Mr. Hammond with us tonight, so just briefly, maybe in the report, what some folks may not have seen is, as much as we are spending this money, in the report, you do mention what the sales of this land could potentially go for. Would you mind just kind of outlining that so people understand why this is a worthwhile investment?
Sure. Thank you, your worship, through to Councillor Wismer Van Meer. We're, as council is aware, we're in the midst of, we have an RFP out for the sale of this land right now. And In the process of developing the road. Sorry, my throat got a little dry. In the process of developing the road, we discovered a large pocket of peat that sterilized about 20 acres of land for sale. The sale of that land represents about $10 million in revenue. So yes, we are spending $4.6 million to resolve this problem. It also represents paving of the road and finishing a cul-de-sac, as well as a few other items. So it's not strictly related to the peat, but that's certainly the lion's share of the expense. So we'll spend $4.6 million to recognize the sale of 10 million.
Thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Wheaton?
Yeah, through your worship, just a comment. I know that 4.6 million sounds like an enormous amount of money, and we talk about large sums of money from time to time. For me, I feel like that it's coming out of reserves. We're not going into debt and causing interest, which would be a burden to the resident. The money is there, and there is a significant return on the investment. And so for that reason, I'm in full favor of moving ahead and creating opportunity for industrial development within our community, which creates jobs.
Of course, we're open for business. Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions? And I thank Mr. Hammond for keeping that brief. And with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Now, happy selling. Next up, we have cultural services of staff complement, 14C.1. Looking for a motion, Councillor Leatherbarrow.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approves a full-time custodian position for the Museum and Market Center Theater to be funded from the current approved budget.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion. Councillor Leatherbarrow.
Through your worship, I see Karen in the back, so I might put her on the spot. Just I was able to volunteer with a group, and Karen was fabulous at helping us with the process to offer this documentary in the community. So Karen, I didn't know if you could just elaborate about how things have increased in terms of rentals specifically at the Market Theater there.
Absolutely. Mayor, through to the question. When we originally asked for this position, it was during COVID, and it was a part-time position just at the museum and the theater, and we didn't really know when things opened up how much time was going to be required. And so in 2022, things started to ramp up, and by this spring, there were times that we were using him more hours than he was allotted, the 24 or 48 in a 2-week period. And it started happening more, and we're getting more rentals. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. So that being the case, it makes sense for it to go full time and to make it so that that's not the case. It's a full-time job.
Councillor Leatherbarrow.
Through your worship, and just a follow up to that, are you seeing new groups come to volunteer, pardon me, come to use the building and those types of events?
Your worship, to the question, yes, we are starting to see new groups coming, and we're also finding a lot more bands are actually coming. And I think that there's a lot more touring. All of a sudden, it's like, we can meet in person now. So people are wanting to go out and do these things, and we want them to be able to do it. So it helps that you want things also to be clean and neat every time somebody's renting it. So it's important that we have the staff in there to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for coming forward. With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Parks and Recreation, Community and Social Wellbeing Reserve Fund, 14D.1. Looking for a motion, Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council approves $50,000 from the Community and Social Wellbeing Reserve Fund in order to provide increased sanitation items and services to encamp residents within Woodstock.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Lauder. Discussion. Oh. She seconded. My apologies. Sorry. Any discussion? Councillor Lauder.
I just have a question of Mr. Connors. Do you have any figure on the cost of the cleanup that was done in the spring on the encampment in the previous golf course area.
Your worship, through to the councilor's question, yes, that cleanup cost $17,000.
Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, if this is okay with you, I would just like to talk a little bit about the task force. And perhaps Councillor Wismer Van Meer or Mayor Accioni would like to speak, but for my peers and the public, I think it's been really beneficial being around the table with everyone that is, boots on the ground, but is very educated and involved and immersed in our community and with a variety of people is really beneficial and eye-opening, quite honestly. So we have identified as a team that an encampment response is certainly the direction that we're taking, and it is important. It's important for our residents that are living in encampments as well as the surrounding private and public property. So I was really happy to see this was our first action item coming to council looking for approval. And Mr. Shapton is in the house, who I do consider a leader in the community and a friend of mine. And I will quote him, which is, residents that are living in encampments, we want to make sure that they're safe and that they have a clean space as best as possible because this is their living room. I often think about that expression late at night. I do have 4 children and they age from 2 to 10, and even my children often will look out the window when the weather is really bad. And I'm just really happy to be around this task force and to our parks team as well too, Rita, Brian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to make sure that they are safe, but everybody seems to be so willing and eager. And I think that that is the message that needs to ripple out into the community, how these are our community members as well, and safety and cleanliness for their living rooms and ours is really, really important.
Thank you. Extremely well said. Thank you. In fact, I do want to say a personal thank you as well to the Director of Operation Sharing. Sean Chaplin is here. He actually took me out to an encampment, and what an eye-opening experience. Mr. Chaplin actually asked one of the residents that was living there at the time what they wanted most. And of course, I'm thinking meal, shower, everything else, but no, it was a gazebo. They wanted someplace to just stay dry and not be stuck in the tent during the rain. And it's like, that has really been sitting with me hard, thinking that we don't necessarily know exactly what they need and want. And I think having someone like Sean and his team at Operation Sharing on the ground and talking with them and making sure everybody deserves to be warm and dry, and we got to do what we can. So I thank council for the support as well as the task force, as we have so virtually all organizations in the city involved at this point. Very happy to have Salvation Army going to be joining us as well. For those that don't know yet, they want to be involved and actually excited for it. So thank you to them. Any other questions? Councillor Schanberg.
I guess maybe just a comment, but in case somebody from the public doesn't know that Brian Connors and the Parks and Recreation Department, along with Chris Kern and Rita Haran, set up a program this year as their new employees for the summertime are starting up, both seasonal for the Works Department and for the Parks Department, to sort of gather everybody together and bring in somebody from the GTA who was a specialist in people living within encampments, just to sort of let people understand that, of course, City Council was invited. There was also members there from, for example, the Oxford County Community Health Center that could supply some extra additional information on what can be seen or what is seen both in the city of Woodstock and wherever when they go into both their daily work. So I want to thank Brian Connors for organizing that.
Yeah, that was actually a quite informative day for sure. So thank you. Councillor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, just the last thing I'll say to Councillor Schattenberg's point is that I was also at that Parks Encampment workshop and a lot of takeaways. And it was amazing in the 2-day session, I was in the 1 day, how many individuals weren't aware of the services that are happening every day in Woodstock / across Oxford. And so with this mayor's task force, and as we continue to evolve and work hard, we can also share those tools and resources with residents, but our area municipalities, because it's not just Woodstock. So I just wanted to follow up with your points that a lot of people were learning about each other and the services that are provided every day.
Actually, to that point, I will mention that I've had Cambridge and Kitchener people reach out to us here in the city of Woodstock as leaders of what we're doing here. So we thank staff as well for getting behind that and supporting council with us. So with that, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we do have splash pad location. Looking for a motion. Counselor Wismer Van Meer, second by Counselor Schattenberg.
That Woodstock City Council approves the new location of the 2023 splash pad build to take place on half of the current upper complex field.
Thank you. Discussion? Counselor, oh. I did get a seconder, Counselor Schattenberg. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Just kind of a comment. I think that this is a great location for this to go. It lends itself to a lot of parking. And there's, the traffic is not as much, there's not a traffic issue for kids that are in the splash pad area. I mean, the way that the grade goes down, it's hopefully confining the young folk and whoever else, the older ones as well, who might be enjoying it. But I think it's just a good location as well, just for families to get to, easy accessibility, transit's there. Just many reasons why I think this is a really great location for us to be considering to put it, and I fully support that.
Thank you. Counselor Schattenberg.
Just a question through to the mayor too, Brian Connors. Just as far as the supply and demand of soccer pitches goes for minor soccer or competitive soccer, even adult games, there's no real effect to take away or at least make that one larger soccer field into a smaller soccer field?
Your worship, through to the councilor's question. The soccer field currently is being used 2 times a week. That field in particular, and it is used by an adult group. However, we are able through scheduling to move them to larger fields at the sportsplex. It would just mean other groups who are practicing on those larger fields will have to move to some smaller fields, but that's a practice and not a game.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Well, that is great news for the residents of the city of Woodstock. Next up, we have outdoor pool. And with that, I will ask for a motion on the floor. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the building of a new outdoor pool at Cowan Fields with a budget of $5,350,000 with $5 million to be financed through debt and the decommissioning of Lions Pool.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Councillor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, we've all had different feedback since this first came. So first of all, thank you to staff for bringing it back so quickly. It was great to look at the options, talk with staff, talk with residents, but I do think for the future of Woodstock, this is a convenient location, brand new pool. I know Lions Pool is very nostalgic for a lot of people. Parking has not been ideal, and that I should clarify, I get confused with Cowan Soccer Field and Cowan Fields. So Cowan Fields, the address is 1495 Devonshire Ave in the north corner. And so there's an existing splash pad, baseball diamonds, a pavilion, and there's lots of parking. So I just feel that this makes the most sense when we look down the road. And I also think that there's tourism benefits. I think that a brand new pool and future recreational needs out there could really attract more people to Woodstock and potentially have them stay in Woodstock, dine in Woodstock, play in Woodstock. So I will be supporting the new outdoor pool.
Thank you. Councillor Lauder.
I've thought about this a lot too, and it's gone back and forth and back and forth. But I agree that I think it should be out at Cowan Fields. That is where we'll have a complex and there'll be a lot more going on out there in time. And I know that it's 5 million, but then there is development charges, I understand, that can be used to help pay for this. So that's why I want to support this. And
I will caution you if you may, because my understanding is we cannot use development
Oh, okay.
charges because we're replacing an existing outdoor pool with a new outdoor pool.
oh, okay, okay.
So I'll just
That's the
stop
wrong
that
information.
there for
Yeah.
counselors'
Yeah.
information, if that is correct. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks for clarifying that. So, yes, but I think it will be money well spent in the future. And with the traffic that's happening on Van Sittard and with all the growth to the north, and there's times when we're waiting 2 blocks on 2 blocks to get through the stoplights at Devonshire and going on 59. So I think that it's just going to increase, and it's just not safe for children, and there's just not the parking there. So I do support it.
Thank you. Counselor Schanberg.
Again, through to our Parks guy, Brian Connors. I guess the best question to ask is just to confirm with people who might be watching this or following this, that maybe didn't read the report online on the agenda. This proposed pool would be essentially the same size or different in some of its components to what we've got at Lions Pool, but certainly much better. Like size wise, we're not going from a nice larger pool to a teeny tiny pool.
Your worship, through to the councillor's question. I'll answer that in, the traditional pools are usually 6 lanes, 25 meters. Lions Pool, however, is 6 lanes, 33 meters. So it's a different size of pool. What we would be proposing out at Cowan would be the 6 lane, 25 meter. And that way, competitive swimmers, they usually count either in short course or long course, which is 25 and 50 meters. So they're not kind of counting in 33 meters. So that would be one of the differences between the 2 pools.
Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Just a question for Mr. Connors. With a new build out at Cowan Fields, obviously their designs in that aren't, prepared at this point, but is there an opportunity for like a covered shielded area for folks that are there watching? I know it, because I play baseball there and it's a wide open space for lots of sun and heat. And is there any talks of additional change rooms or washrooms? Is there any of that needs to be considered in this?
Your worship, through to the councillor's question, certainly change rooms will be included in the in an original build. As far as covered areas, I would say both in this bill for an outdoor pool, we would have to look at what the funding envelope is, and if we can do some more shaded areas, we certainly would look at some shaded lattice work to create some more shade for folks. Otherwise, we would employ the simpler fixes like umbrellas and that type of thing.
Sorry. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Just kind of a general comment. I think this has been the teeter-totter ride for me. It's been back and forth. I grew up swimming in that pool as well, skinned my knees multiple times on that old concrete side. It's really tough to think of that potentially not being a part of our community anymore. And maybe the bit of the nostalgia has been hard for me. But I also have to say that with what Councillor Lauder said, the traffic and parking, and in speaking with the staff that are there working, it's such a huge concern, and safety is really becoming an issue there. And you get a little one that runs out of the car across a really busy street. I think that's what has really weighed on my mind in this. And this is not an easy choice. I'll just leave that at that.
Counselor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, I just have 2 questions for Mr. Connors. One, when I heard from a resident or 2 that said, can we have both Lions Pool and a new outdoor pool and low taxes? And so, but truth be told, there is some type of population number which would trigger having 2 outdoor pools. So I didn't know if you could kind of break down the the percentage, like if we're encroaching 50,000 or just over 50,000 population, what would it have to be in order for the city of Woodstock to look at 2 outdoor pools? I know it's a hypothetical.
Your worship, through to the councillor's question. Normally, the consultants with the rec facility needs guides, they do have charts with the municipalities and what they're looking for. And they don't really track the outdoor pools, it's the indoor pools, right? So it's not the 2 months of usage, it's the 12. So usually when you're getting near to 75,000, that is when you would go to a second indoor pool or start to plan for that. However, that is based on a 6-lane collegiate pool, so a 6-lane 25-meter pool, where we have a bit more space. We have more water in the city, just given how Southside is. So that that right now, and probably for the next, I would say, if I'm guessing, at least 10 to 15 years won't be required. Again, it just depends on our population. I could be wildly off if it grows rapidly, or wildly off if we're not growing this much.
So if I can just follow up, thank you, your worship. Thank you for that. It just makes sense when we're looking at what our population is today when we make this decision and what would require an additional pool / outdoor pool. And so to that point, with Lions being closed today and potentially permanently, can you just share for the public how Southside Aquatic Center has been managing all of the lessons, the camps and things like that? Has it been manageable? Thanks.
Your worship, through to the councillor's question. Our lessons have been busy, but that it's not, we're not turning folks away. And right now, Southside's managing with the Learn to Swim and all the other programs, really. And that is with Lions Pool down this summer. We also have Tilsonburg, our neighbor. They don't have an indoor pool, and the YMCA hasn't been open since COVID. So we still have water to manage. And our biggest pinch point is always, and what usually is the driver to build more is, what is the Learn to Swim program? If we start to get a lot of wait lists and a lot of problems there, and we're turning people away because we can't fit them in because of space, that's generally the trigger point.
Thank you, Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I'm going to fully support this motion. I think that a pool at Cowan Field on Devonshire is the right location for servicing the northern more area of the city. This is not an easy decision for me after being a lifeguard for 10 years and growing up with a Lions pool myself and the experience of outdoor water. I also recognize that outdoor water only gets used for 2 months of the year, and $5 million is a significant spend. It's no secret that I'm not the biggest fan of debt, specifically when we're talking about high interest rates. So my hope in my crystal ball is that by 2025, we'll be in a much different financial and economic situation, that interest rates won't be what we're experiencing today. If I had the perfect scenario, it would be to build an indoor pool rather than an outdoor pool, because that would be eligible for development charges and not to go to debt. But that's not what's in front of us today. And so if an outdoor pool, outdoor water at Cowan Field best services this community, and we can manage the financial aspect of that, which we really won't know until 2025 what that exact picture will be. But I think this is really an opportunity for Woodstock as we grow for more people to be able to access water and Learn to Swim programs that will become a long-term benefit to our community.
Councillor Tate.
Through your worship, I won't be supporting the motion. As I said before, I was hoping to finish my career in politics, not having to vote on Lions Pool again. So very disappointed that it came to this. I just, even talking to staff today, I had already made my mind up. I was not going to support a new pool. And then I went back and forth, but then the final nail was I can't spend $5 million for 2 months. So to me, when I look at who uses Lions Pool, it's this area that, it's people that don't have a pool. When you look at an aerial photograph of the city, a lot of people in that end have pools. I grew up in this end of the city and there's no pools. So, we rode our bike, we walked. I understand there's, we always hear that issue with the parking, but there's never been a problem. I know that the population's higher, but to me, it was always a neighborhood pool where you would ride your bike or you would walk or your parents would take you. So fully appreciate everybody's comments. I fully understand. It's just, I can't spend the money for 2 months for a new pool and close Lions Pool. I just can't do it.
Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Through the chair to Mr. Connors, in the report, there is, it is mentioned about sponsorship as a potential. What would that look like potentially? Obviously, we know this is the Lions Pool. This is not what, if it was a new build, what that would be. But when you're referring to sponsorship, what could that potentially look like financially for this build?
Your worship, through to the councilor's question, that I really can't put a number on it or pinpoint it. It would be naming rights, and we do have a staff that does work on sponsorship and finding sponsorship. So that would be tasked to the staff to try to get the best price for that, which would help to offset slightly. I won't put anyone under any illusions that this is gonna pay for a bulk of this bill.
And just a kind of a quick follow-up to that, similar to like, Cowan Park and Cowan Fields, it's a naming right that would be where the financial leverage would come from, correct?
Let's be clear, we will take $5.3 million for anybody that wants to sponsor the pool, right? Any other questions or comments? Counselor Leatherborough.
The last one, through your worship, just to Counselor Tate's comments, I would say that if this passes and Lions Pool is no more, there should be some type of agreement that whatever's done with that plot of land, you call it the Lion's Den.
I like that. Counselor Tate.
Yeah, just further that it was the Lions Club that originated it. That's why we've got the Lions Pool on, as you are aware. And actually funny that you mentioned about having the two pools, because I did ask staff that. I said, well, could we leave Lions Pool open until the new build? But the comment was for 2 months, why would you spend the 2 million and then we're gonna bet so. I thought the same thing because I hated to see it closed and then have no pool until the other one's open, but I appreciate that the cost would be too much for the 2 months.
Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
I promise this is my last one. I'm not sure who I would direct this question to, but if by chance the pool was to close, be decommissioned, what would happen to that property? Is there, maybe to Mr. Connors, is there a potential for us to put, a skate park, a small skate park or something of a smaller footprint potentially in that space for youth to utilize?
Your worship, through to the councilor's question, I think that would become open up for discussion. However, something like a skate park or even I would be concerned about the proximity for residents. So it might be tennis courts, which are a little quieter than even like pickleball courts, which I know are still in demand, or it could be for another use outside of recreation. I think everything should be on the table there.
Skate park was just the first thing that came to my head. I really, I don't think I would suggest that's what go there, but that's just what came. Pickleball, let's say pickleball.
Oh, skateboarders just got excited. Counselor Schadenberg.
Earlier today in this very chamber, the Mayor Jerry was with us, and so was Bernie Wheat, when we recognized 2 retiring members of the Recreation Advisory Committee, and Don Fulkerson and Dan Gray were here to receive a plaque basically for their years of service. And the reason I mention that is because the number of years they've been on the Recreation Advisory Committee. I've been on the Recreation Advisory Committee longer than both of those 2 gentlemen. And so we had toured even in November of when Peter Johnston was still running the swimming pool, the Lions Pool, and going through there and taking a look at everything from what the piping might look like underneath the pool to at that point in time, it was a real filtration system, which had been fixed in the meantime. And I mean, it's sad to say I grew up on Oxford Street, so I certainly swam in Lions Pool as a child and certainly did so as an adult as well, even with that awkward rubberized sort of floor that was in the pool as of current times. But I really do think based on the location, based on the parking, it really is time to sadly move forward.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then no, I had a tough time with this as well. I'll certainly say that for the public. Though I will be supporting a new pool. I kind of finally came to that conclusion last night. I was at my Wednesday night ball game with my team. We don't normally play at 6:30, but we did this week. It was an early game. And what really set that for me was how many families were out last night walking around by those ball diamonds, playing in the splash pads and seeing what could be. So the amount of people and walking and everything else, and my own teammates, we got talking about their kids can come and they're over on the splash pads and everything, but they could be swimming and everything while we're at our baseball games, and thinking that though I'm a proud Lions Club member along with Councillor Schattenberg, it is a sad day, of course, for the naming of the Lions pool, but it certainly has served the city of Woodstock well. And if this is successful, I would suggest maybe to staff to start considering some kind of proper farewell, at least, if nothing else, that building deserves, because though it's probably been close to 30 years since I've swam in that pool myself, I certainly swam in it a lot during high school. So with that, I'm going to call a vote. If there's no other questions, of course. All those in favor of a new pool? Opposed? Motion is carried. City of Woodstock is going to get a new outdoor pool. And I do want to say a thank you to everyone from the public that has reached out. Really took a lot of your input in mind, but this is, I think a lot of people are going to benefit by a new pool. Next up, we have economic development. Councillor Schattenberg, seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
The Woodstock City Council directs staff from the Development Department to waive the city's right to repurchase of the subject property, subject site based on the information provided in the report.
Thank you. Any other or any questions of council? Councillor Schattenberg.
I guess maybe a brief explanation from Development Officer Brad Hammond on the background on this.
Great, thank you, your worship, through to Councillor Schattenberg. So as council's aware, our sales agreements have certain clauses in it to protect the city. One of the clauses prevents the sale of undeveloped land. So in the definition of a sale, we include the sale of shares in the company or a change in ownership structure. And that's really there to prevent kind of a loophole or a way around that restriction. The issue before you tonight with Armor Pro, that's not someone using a loophole to get around it. As I mentioned, their Armor Pro Audio was quite heavily impacted by COVID in terms of the loss of all of their business really for about 2 years when in-person events went away. So as a way of keeping their project going forward, continuing to have a physical home in Woodstock and ownership in the land, they were faced with the prospect about having to go out and find a partner to make this building go forward. So they've done that through Mr. Buchholz as a partner. He's come forward. They're both happy with the relationship. It will allow Armor Pro to own real estate in the city still in a partnership type format. So I think that's a very good thing. And as also I mentioned in my report, under this new partnership, we're seeing about 250% of their commitment to build occurring. So there's going to be a much larger building there than there would have been under the original agreement we've had with Armor Pro. So that's a good thing, more taxable assessment to pay for things like pools. And the third positive thing about this proposal is that it will create 7 additional leasable units in the city for smaller businesses. There's not a lot of that type of space around right now, so it's in demand. So I think that, that checks another box that we'd be interested in. So this is, we're asking council to waive our right to repurchase. In my opinion, Armor Pro is still in the ownership structure. So it's generally within what we're hoping to see.
Thank you. Any other questions of council? No, I'm quite happy with this and I will be supporting this motion as a local company. And of course, the added square footage available for other businesses is a great thing. So far more than we planned on initially. So with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wheaton.
Very sorry to interrupt. Could I ask a point of clarification of the clerk? I was out of the room when the motion was read. Can I vote on the motion if I wasn't in the room when the motion was read? It's procedurally, I just wanted to make sure.
We can simply read it again. That's no problem at all. And I'll read that out. The Woodstock City Council directs staff from the Development Department to waive the city's right of repurchase of the subject site based on the information provided in this report. Is the motion on the floor. Okay, with that, all those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. Next up, we have clerk's procedure bylaw update. Councillor Tate.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the proposed changes to Municipal Code Chapter 16 procedure excluding items 7 to 12. And further that the necessary bylaw be prepared.
Okay, is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Lauder? Discussion? You want to speak to that, Councillor Tate?
Councillor Leatherbarrow added a procedure, which I thought, I actually wasn't aware that it was there. So changing just the wording for our first meeting, which I fully understand it was the wording needed to be changed. The ones I'm excluding, just for the public's benefit, there was one to amend. Well, first off, I want to say this to start with. We're not clerks, we're a council. And to me, the changes from 7 to 12 are all under the jurisdiction to me of the clerk. We have an extremely well versed and educated clerk who does an amazing job. And I would not ever second guess anything that is done related to the clerk's department. So that's my first thing I want to say. So all these to me were the changes were basically changes to the agenda. And I noticed a lot of them are what happens at the county, which it's 2 different tiers. So the first one was to change approval of the agenda as the first item, remove additions to the agenda. I think it's extremely important to the public that we read off the additions to the agenda because they may just read the agenda on the Monday and they won't be aware of the additions till we read them off. And I don't think it's cumbersome to us to read them off. The second one was to agenda contents to add considerations of matters arising from closed session. I don't know of any other council that does it in this area other than closed, and I would not support that, changing that. To move consideration of correspondence ahead of delegations. And the reasoning was correspondence to do with planning can be reviewed and discussed before, but normally with our agenda, our planning correspondence is attached to the planning applications. And I think it's also important to the public to be aware of their time. So when a delegation comes forward, they don't have to sit through anything else. I think it's important that the delegations are first. Second, the other one was to remove mayor's council reports. I think they are very beneficial. Councillor Leatherbarrow has brought 2 reports forward from events that she has gone to in conferences. The conferences are funded by the taxpayer that we take. They pay for them. And I think it's very important. I thought it was very beneficial that Councillor Leatherbarrow spoke to it and explained why it was beneficial that she went on the conference. So we've had that numerous time with, a mayor bringing a report or a council. I think that's important. Removal of addresses and closing comments at the end. I think that is actually not part of the meeting. It's not recorded in the minutes, and it's not part of the minutes. It's not recorded. That to me is one of the very important items that we do at the end of the meeting to recognize people in the community, events in the community, people watch council. I mean, we don't get a lot of viewers, but I think it's important, if there's people like to be recognized. And our duty is to the taxpayers and to the responsibility to them. And I'll just give an example. The last meeting, Councillor Wismer Van Meer and I both mentioned Graham Hart. Well, Hart FM and the Sentinel ended up doing a story on him. And I don't think they would have recognized him or understood his contribution to the community if we hadn't mentioned it in our closing comments. So I think it's extremely important to the people that we have those closing comments. There's a lot of events people might not be aware of. Even us sitting here, as Councillor Wismer Van Meer had said, she hadn't been aware that he had passed away. And then the final one, removing or adding the unfinished business. We don't have that for reasons because we don't have unfinished business. So just my comment is I'm not including any of these because to me, this is a clerk's job and I find that we would be micromanaging. So I will just leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other discussion, thoughts? Councillor Lauder?
Yes, I agree with the summarization that Councillor Tate has given on all of those the items, and I support the removal of not adding that to the procedure bylaw. Those changes.
Thank you. Councillor Leatherborough?
Through your worship, so I had my suggestion that is in there that Councillor Tate mentioned. It was around language that we've discussed earlier. And the only issue I had with was number 10, because to the point that I do enjoy the councillor reports. But I will just say that it was asked of us to submit feedback. Like I don't want anybody to think that there's micromanaging and that we don't appreciate how wonderful Amy Humphries is, our city clerk. And to that point, I've actually connected with a lot of councillors and every municipality is run so differently. Procedure bylaws, I mean, maybe I'll speak for myself. I'm still getting comfortable with it. So I do find I like these other additions. It was just number 10 that I would omit. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you. Councillor Schanberg?
I just wanted to quickly comment why I would make sure number 11 sort of stayed out of the changes. In other words, that we could do councillors' comments. I think it's a nice connection to the advisory committees that we're on. For example, I sit on the museum committee and I would want to talk about the 75th anniversary of the museum. I'm on the recreation advisory committee, so I'd want to talk about the Woodstock Sports Wall of Fame. And those are things that are very much connected to the municipality. Now, having said that, I could also see somebody going way off tangent, which necessarily isn't the right thing to promote or talk about in our sort of our post comments.
Councillor Tate, I believe, was next.
Sorry, through the chair. And I should have said, I appreciate the work that went into it. I should have said that from the beginning, and which I do, but I had an issue with these and that's just my comment.
Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Just a comment, and to both the councillors that did submit these, obviously it took a lot of time and thoroughness to go through. I mean, I read this thing multiple times. I did reach out to Mrs. Humphries a couple times about different things that didn't need to be added to this, just clarifying some details and such. But I am going to agree with Councillor Tate on, for the most part, I would be okay with these not being added. The moving the delegations was one for sure that I just didn't quite feel comfortable in seeing that moved. It could be a long time for them to wait. And I do agree in the fact that we really should be considering their time that they're giving to us. Also, kind of number 11 as well. I think it's a really good opportunity. Like Councillor Tate said, I wouldn't have known that Graham Hart had passed away until days later. And I worked with Graham Hart on multiple times and did not know that. So I just think there is some advantage to that. And I think I've had people reach out to me after meetings and say, I had no idea that event was happening, or, Councillor Lauder brings some really great information from the art gallery that we don't always hear about. So I think it does add some benefits for not only us as council, but our community as a whole.
Thank you. Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Items 7 through 12 were submissions that I made to the clerk based on the request for information and sitting down on a good conversation about procedural bylaws. I fully admit that I am a little bit of a wonk when it comes to this sort of thing. And perhaps coming up with this many items is a significant change for people who have done it differently for a long time. Some of the reasoning behind the suggested changes, not necessarily to omit categories entirely, but that they might fit under other categories. And so a mayor's report, a councilor's report, and the addresses, so that would include items number 10 and 11, could easily fit under new business. The moving of, was it correspondence? Was simply about cleaning up some of those things that we might like to hear before the planning reports. Sometimes documents do come in after the Monday planning meeting. So it was literally just a moving for streamlining and clarity of, and the functionality of moving a meeting in a, what's the word that you would describe in a streamlined manner, as opposed as pertaining to item number 1 of approving the agenda and additions to the agenda. For me, that's just making it clean and simple, that we know what the agenda is right off the top. So it was really just a matter of simplifying a few things, cleaning things up based on what input I was asked for.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, I'll just state that I'm going to thank Councillor Wheaton for actually bringing some of these forward, because it's really made me as a mayor to sit here who kind of runs these the way it is, and makes you really think about each process individually. Maybe it's because I've been sitting in these chambers for 9 years and quite used to the way things are. I will certainly say, as a newer county councillor, where some of these are relative to those, I do oppose a lot of these sections, as Councillor Tate has mentioned already. I think there's a lot of value here, especially in numbers 10 and 11, talking about the just general comments after the fact. I would not see that or want to see that ever go away. And for those reasons, I will be supporting everything but 7 to 12 as mentioned. But I do thank you for the work that put into it. Councillor Wheaton.
Yeah, just to follow up, that while I've only been a councillor here for 8 months, I did work for municipalities for 15 years. So that did feed a lot of the background into my experience at various tables. So this isn't the way it should be done because it's been done for 20 years. It was based on experience and a desire to streamline meetings and for the public, because we evolve and we change. A number of years ago, we would never have thought that we'd have to change our procedures to allow for online meetings, and yet we did. And so it was in that lens. Am I going to live and die on this sword? Absolutely not, because I'm one of 7 people that are guided by this document and these procedures. I do think that they have merit, but again, I'm one of 7 people, and I appreciate that the opportunity to give input and to be heard.
I'd also like to say thank you to the clerk's department for sitting down so much with me and going over them. We did go in detail. And with that, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll call a vote. All those in favor of the motion as stated? Opposed? That is carried. Next up, we have 14F2 minor variance number MV 10-23. Looking for, oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council supports the Committee of Adjustment decision made on June the 12th, 2023 for minor variance application MV 10-23, 262 Wellington Street North.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder on that. Counselor Schadenberg, discussion? Any questions? Counselor Schadenberg?
Sometimes what's interesting through the mayor that you can read a report and understand what's going on, but I talked to both Gord Huff at the county office across the street to get a background on this additional residential units and where it's headed, especially with detached properties, detached garages. And I talked to Mr. Miller, also from the planning department, and today as well. And when it's all said and done, the bottom line is whether or not a minor variance should be allowed to allow a detached garage of this height, whatever it was, 5.4 meters or 5 meters. It's just excessive. And I talked to the chair of the Committee of Adjustment, Howard Pye, as well, and to get his background down. And so I certainly are speaking in favor of supporting the Committee of Adjustments ruling from it was actually back in June 12th, as the motion says. So it wasn't just this past week. It was last month's meeting of Committee of Adjustment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's carried. None opposed. Counselor Leatherborough? Can return? Yeah. So nothing from our CAO's office, Human Resources, but we do have Fire Services here tonight. And with that, I will ask for a motion on the floor. Counselor Leatherborough?
Thank you. I couldn't find it as I typed it out. Pardon me.
Right.
So I have a different motion, so I don't know if I have a seconder, but I will read it and we shall go from there. That in respect to capital project FIR 00026 replace fire apparatus engine 1 bracket ALF pumper, council approves. 1, the additional funding in the amount of 225,000 from the purchase of fire equipment reserve account. 2, the additional funding in the amount of 160,000 from the hydro reserves account. 3, the repayment of the total amount of 330,000 from future contributions to the purchase of fire equipment services to the hydro reserves account. 4, the purchase of Pierce stock HDRP pumper from Commercial Emergency Equipment Co. to the amount of 1,385,000, including applicable taxes. And 5, that cab repainting be removed from the post-delivery alteration scope of work.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder on that motion? Counselor Tate? Discussion, would you like to speak to that, Counselor Leatherborough?
Through your worship, and thank you to Mr. Slager for being here. I'm sure you'll tell the public more further in detail with your presentation, what we're looking at, but there is a slight altercation that I have made dependent on council, and it is revolving around the cab being repainted. And I ask this because, well, first I'll ask you, in the meeting, or sorry, in the report, I'm a little frazzled from walking back and forth. Sorry, that was terrible timing. In the report, I will quote, "There will be some post-delivery alterations required to the stock vehicle, including cab repainting to match our current fleet and the addition of blue emergency lighting." I'm aware of what blue emergency lighting is, but I was wondering if you could elaborate. It's my understanding that the truck is already red. So what would be the need to spend $15,000 to repaint it?
Your worship, through to Councillor Leatherborough's question. To kind of walk our way through this, if we were to do a spec truck right from where we build from the ground up, right from engineering designs and that sort of setup, it has been the process and the practice of the Woodstock Fire Department that in that development, we have the trucks designed as black over red. That has been our badging. That has been our recognition of all of our apparatus, and anybody who sees us driving around, every one of our apparatus have that color scheme on them. When we've moved this with a stock apparatus of what we're looking at, it's twofold as to why we're going this route with a stock one. It shortens down the delivery time with travel, with delays and such like that. We're going from a 2.5 year delivery time down to we could have this truck by November of this year. The truck is painted, it is designed, it is done and ready to go. It is red all over. We do want to have that uniformity. It might be fire service isn't normally a look over function type of thing, but it is one of the aspects that we do like to have the uniformity look with that. When we do anticipate the cost of it being $15,000 compared to the $1.4 million for the total cost of the vehicle, it was the opinion of us within the department that it was a very minor cost associated with that. And as I said, it would have been something, if we were doing a spec, we would have included it right in from the time of at construction.
Councillor Leatherborough.
So through your worship, to Mr. Slager, thank you so much for that. I think I've caught myself to calm down a bit now. So yeah, I just struggle with, it wasn't included in the report that I had to go seeking for it. So I found that just a little challenging that it was kind of bundled all in because I didn't want to take away from not needing this truck that your team does need, but that I am aware of branding. And if it's already red, I just don't see the significance in $15,000 when you already have the red truck. So that is why I've made this suggestion based off of the report and getting information from staff. That's why I brought this forward, and I appreciate the information that you've provided.
Thank you very much.
If I can, because you're here, Chief, what is the expected cost savings of us taking a stock unit and spending $15,000 to make it match the color scheme versus a fresh order, getting the 2.5 years? Any ideas of what the cost savings might be on a fire truck?
Your worship, through to the question. So when we've looked at this process, we've been monitoring what the cost increases have been for apparatus manufacturing for the past while, and it seems to be in the neighborhood about every 4 months they're starting to see a 7 to 10% increase in pricing. It just keeps going up and up and up. As again, this comes back to when we forecast to purchase this vehicle pre-COVID, we were in the $800,000 to $850,000 price range, and now we're talking $1.4 million. So with this apparatus, it was constructed, it had begun and completed construction under an older price point. So it is done, and the manufacturer is selling it at the price that that truck was selling for when they started constructing it. We looked at a number of different apparatus, not in addition to this, ones that had been constructed newer that were actually a bit of a lesser of a truck. When I compare them, we compare unit to unit, but we're at the higher price point, and we are basically, or higher price build, we would be getting less of a truck that was at the 6 month later price structure and going from that. So we are starting to see, if we were going to be doing a spec truck now, we'd be going at what the prices are today. This was a truck that was spec built based on prices that were a 1.5 years ago. So we are having some cost savings with respect to just the base cost with that. And then through the procurement process there, again, there is some savings of 5.5% from the base cost associated there that come through. So
Thank you for that. Councillor Tate.
Through the chair, since the chief is here, and I'm going to support the motion. I was originally going to not support it because I wanted it to go to tender because it was such a large amount, but then I realized that was a mistake. So I'm not going to do that because it would hinder when we would get it. So my other question is, because the price of these is so high, what do you have any future plans to replace other trucks like the platform trucks so that we don't get behind like we did with this because there's such a large amount of money?
Your worship, through to Councillor Tate. So we are in a process right now. We're kind of, it's a bit unique. We have the fleet that we had before was all American LaFrance product. American LaFrance, the company itself went under. It's very hard to retain parts for replacement that. So we are in the process of trying to replace all of those, get them out of the fleet, and it makes it a lot easier. We have one apparatus after this one that'll still be an American LaFrance, and that's our current ladder 1 unit, the aerial apparatus. It is in the forecast for timing. We've tried to extend the longevity of it just due to the costing. It's kind of a bit of a shell game that's here. in through the planning with our operating budget of being able to put money aside for reserves and try to reduce purchasing an apparatus on debt, which councilors have expressed a concern of wanting to not go that route. We can proceed and advance purchases on apparatus with council's direction, incurring a debt where we don't have the funds to be able to do that. That can probably be part of a discussion, but we do have planning on replacing apparatus with reserve funding to hopefully prevent that. I'm not going to say no to buying a truck when we need them. If we do need it sooner, we'll move that way and we will come back to council, but I am also trying to be fiscally responsible.
Thank you. Any other questions from the chief? Councillor Leatherborough?
So I just want to clarify for my peers and for the public that what I'm not supporting is the $15,000 to repaint it if we're being fiscally responsible. So I don't want it to get mixed that I don't support that you really need this truck. So I just thought I would take the opportunity before we vote to say, if you don't see my hand up, I still know that you need and we'll get the truck.
Any other questions or comments before I call the vote? Okay, Councillor Schanberg.
Just want to clarify that the vote will be on minus the extra paint.
That is correct, as stated by Councillor Leatherborough, for a total of $1,385,000, not the 1.4 million. For everyone's clarity, anybody need that read to them again, or are we okay with that? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, we have consumer fireworks complaint enforcement and bylaw comparison. Looking for a motion on the floor, and I asked the chief to stick around just in case. Looking for a motion? Councillor Leatherborough?
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council direct staff to prepare the necessary bylaw in order to prohibit the sale and discharge of fireworks entirely under Municipal Code Chapter 802 fireworks.
Okay, do we have a seconder on that motion? Councillor Wheaton? Discussion, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Leatherborough?
I have some notes here. Yeah, so I am really appreciative that we got this report back. I have heard from a lot of residents since we just had Canada Day regarding fireworks. I know that they are hard to enforce. I did see that the other option would be to try to go the route of changing what type of fireworks would be allowed. And I think that there would be additional education. I think there will be a bit of a headache that way. And I should clarify that this is personal use. This has nothing to do with city events. I'm really worried about how people view this, but I really don't want anybody to think that we wouldn't have fireworks at, say, Canada Day. I just think that there are environmental concerns that I have. Being on the Woodstock Environmental Advisory Committee, we're also hopefully trying to be a bird-friendly city. So I think about birds and pets. And truthfully, all of the fires that we've seen, in other parts of Canada and Ontario, it's very concerning that I wouldn't be surprised if in the next decade, fireworks are completely no longer. So with that, I think that I hope to see a support where we're not selling them in Woodstock. I understand that you can go outside of the city and bring them in, but I really think the message should be they need to be let off, at the Canada Day event and get some type of handle on the disruption that they are causing, as well as the concerns I have deeply around the environment and potential fires.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Lauder?
I support this resolution. Again, it's about the animals too. And with the fires and what we've had this summer, we're fortunate here now with rain, but on the 1st of July and leading up to that, we weren't getting rain, and we did have a ban. And so I know that a lot of people will be happy, a lot of people will be disappointed in this, but they don't go by the rules, and it's very hard to be charged in these bylaws. The fire department having to go out, the police department having to go out. It's a big cost to us. And what they can't find anyone that's let these off, the fireworks off. So, and I think that if the other resolutions that suggest resolutions here, it's just kind of dressing that we're, okay, well, we'll do this to think that we're trying to do something else. So I agree with and support the motion as read. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Counselor Wheaton?
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I think that there are things in life that are necessary to have, and there are things in life that are nice to have, and fireworks are not a necessity. I think that this bylaw is read, or this policy is read, certainly is clean, it's tidy, it's consistent, it's easy to understand, it's a little easier to enforce than other options. And so it has my full support.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Tate?
Yeah, just through the chair, I also will support the motion. We did already try once with, I think last term, we tried to change the bylaw that was only allowed on the day. Well, that didn't work. So it's impossible to monitor it or to enforce it. And the other issue too is like the small kids that go to bed early, they started July 1st, they started on Thursday this year, like it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's unfortunate, but also a reminder that we're still gonna have the community fireworks, which are really important. It's just the individual ones.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, then I'll state I will not be supporting this. I think fireworks is a fun part. I do wish everyone would obey, and I think it's only been about a year since we made the motion last time to go to the single day. I was certainly willing and hoping to take this as information tonight, if I can be honest, in hopes of staff gathering their information on enforcement and encouraging. In fact, if it's my understanding, Chief, since you're here, there was a charge laid over the July 1st weekend.
Your worship, through to the question, correct. Over the Canada Day weekend, we made some modifications to the response tactic. We were aware that with Woodstock Police, their call volume's gone up. It's a lower priority call going to a fireworks response. And we had dispatch send Woodstock Fire to more. We actually wound up going to, as the report shows, those 9 responses were for just the Canada Day weekend for Woodstock Fire going, that we were out and about. 2 of those dates were off the single date that were permitted. 1 did result in a charge because we were able to locate an individual who was setting them off on the day. They were apologetic. They weren't aware of the bylaw according to them. However, hopefully the $125 charge, if the fireworks bylaw had stayed or does stay, will remind them not to again, but a charge had been laid at that point.
Thank you. And I guess for those reasons that, it is fairly new and everything else, I was hoping we can continue with some fireworks, realizing it is a problem in a lot of neighborhoods. I'm certainly not denying that. We've talked about it at length in past councils as well, but for myself, I will not be supporting this, just in hopes that staff would have had more time to put together and hopefully educate the public so it was used on proper times for those that do want to enjoy it. But I am only one vote. Councillor Leatherborough.
Through your worship, just a question to staff. How long, if this is passed, how long would it take to then be enacted, the change? Like, are we looking into the fall? Oh, sorry, pardon me. I'm so sorry.
No.
Looking the wrong way.
Your worship, through to Councillor Leatherborough. So a modification to the bylaw for an outright change or an outright ban, it's kind of pretty straightforward. We don't have to put a lot of restrictions because we are, if you do review the current bylaw, we restrict how they can display, as far as for the sales and all that aspect of it. Doing an outright ban is a very tight knit bylaw. It can come back through. One of the considerations I do want to bring up, as we were talking about both the sales and the discharge of fireworks for the 2023 year, is if we are moving to an outright ban, we are going to have some vendors here in the community that we have a permit process for them to sell fireworks. I don't have an exact number of how many have it, but they tend to buy their full year allotment for the May, July, and Diwali all at one time. So if we are looking at moving towards a ban of a fireworks, the sales of between now and Diwali, we are going to potentially have some vendors who have wholesale stock that they're not able to sell within the community. Now, that is not the, that's outside of the bylaw. It's not something that I do think that may be something for council to consider when it comes to the implementation of the bylaw. I can have it back relatively quickly. Council can set an implementation time as a factor to the bylaw, whether you wish to have it in, become enforceable immediately or deferred to the 2024 year. That'll be council's discretion.
Okay, any other questions or comments before I call the vote, the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried 4-3. So, yes, Chief, if you can put that together and I guess present it and council will decide if this is correct. I'm gonna ask the clerk. This next steps here, and I'm thinking of those business owners that do have, who may be going in a bit of a panic mode right now. Is there a time frame we should probably give the public at all? I'm not sure who to ask that.
Your worship, the chief indicated that we will be able to come back with the report fairly quickly. So that would give considerations to the implementation timeframes. Practically speaking, a new bylaw that establishes an outright ban will also require new short form wording, which requires an application through the Chief Justice. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. And so any bylaw that implements a ban naturally will take time to create that offense wording in order to actually act in a practical way for an enforcement of the new bylaw. So it will come back quickly, but it will take time regardless to put it into enforcement.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving along, Public Works. Municipal Blue Box Program update. Counselor Tate,
Move that Woodstock City Council approve staff to explore the option of partnering with a contractor that is positioned to be awarded the entire Oxford County catchment area for recycling collection services within Woodstock.
thank you. Looking for a seconder. Counselor Leatherborough, discussion. Counselor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Just a point of clarification that this is exploring residential recycling collection services within Woodstock.
Thank you. Through you, your worship, to the councilor's question, that's correct. It is residential eligible sources. So that's residential. All the other aspects of this change to EPR is still up in the air. But at this point in time, we see a fourth quarter RFP process gonna be out on the table, if you will. And we want to explore what those options are for our residents and make sure that we bring back the options to council so that for your consideration, so that we can have the best program. We believe we provide a great service here and we want to continue that high level of service.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Counselor Shanberg.
Yeah, sure. Also through to Mr. Locke, anything that's decided here would be pertaining solely to the practice of recycling and nothing to do with garbage pickup or hopefully, cross your fingers, the future of organics pickup in the city of Woodstock.
Through you, your worship, to the councilor's question. Yes, that's correct, that it is solely, this is only looking at the aspects of, as mentioned, the curbside recycling collection program for eligible sources or residential. All the waste things are intertwined because we use similar trucks. So how all that works, one will impact the other. But at this point in time, what we're doing is trying to clarify what our role can be going forward in the new EPR model.
Counselor Shanberg.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this statement would be correct or not, because obviously it's convoluted and in a three-way item, but obviously when we put a garbage tag on our garbage, that's revenue for the county of Oxford. If we were picking up organics, it's not like the city of Woodstock can pick up any revenue for selling potato peels, in theory. The only area whatsoever as far as the divert, i.e. reduce, reuse, recycle, et cetera, that we could gain some revenue from is would be plastics, fibers and aluminum, et cetera. So it'd be a shame that we would, in theory, possibly be out of that business.
Through your worship to the councilor's question or comment. It's a provincial change that to move to the extended producer's responsibility. So you're correct in that that's the commodity that actually garners a return on the recyclable. But it's a change that's coming and we don't have control of that. So yeah, we're just looking to understand how we move forward with this change that the province has mandated.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. And again, for those following along, we have already taken care of Woodstock Art Gallery digital strategy. So we go on to 16, notice of motion. This motion is read at the meeting, but no discussion can take place. This resolution will appear under new business at the August 10th meeting. Councillor Shanberg.
Yeah, just read this into the record. Whereas at June 22nd, 2023, Southwestern Public Health Board of Health meeting, a report entitled Consumption and Treatment Services Feasibility Study Findings Report was approved unanimously. Whereas this report included an exploration of the need for and feasibility of consumption and treatment services in Oxford and Elgin counties. Whereas this report concluded that the region served by Southwestern Public Health would benefit from consumption and treatment services. Whereas this report recommended proceeding with phase 2 of the study, which will involve identifying a potential consumption and treatment services site in the city of Woodstock. Whereas this report also acknowledges that some people do not support this strategy, creating the need for ongoing consultation and engagement with the community, business owners and operators, health system and community partners to support the ongoing exploration of consumption and treatment services in the region. Whereas the Consumption and Treatment Services Application Guide from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care requires that local municipal council support, i.e. a council resolution endorsing the consumption and treatment services must be obtained. Whereas a council resolution of non-support for a consumption site in the city of Woodstock before commencement of phase 2 of the study would prevent unnecessary time and effort on any ongoing exploration and consideration of a site within the city of Woodstock. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Woodstock does not support a consumption and treatment services site within the municipal boundaries of the city of Woodstock, and further this resolution be circulated to Southwestern Public Health, Oxford MP, Arpan Canada, and Oxford MPP Ernie Hardeman.
Thank you, Councillor, and just remind everybody that this will come back August 10th meeting to discuss and vote upon. Next up, we do have new business. Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Leatherbarrow. Whereas all Ontarians deserve and expect a safe and respectful workplace. Whereas municipal governments, as the democratic institutions most directly engaged with Ontarians need respectful discourse. Whereas several incidents in recent years of disrespectful behavior and workplace harassment have occurred amongst members of municipal councils. Whereas these incidents seriously and negatively affect the people involved and lower public perceptions of local government. Whereas municipal codes of conduct are helpful tools to set expectations of council member behavior, whereas municipal governments do not have the necessary tools to adequately enforce compliance with municipal codes of conduct. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Woodstock supports the call of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for the Government of Ontario to introduce legislation to strengthen municipal codes of conduct and compliance with them in consultation with municipal governments. And further be it resolved that the legislation encompass the Association of Municipalities of Ontario recommendations for updating municipal codes of conduct to account for workplace safety and harassment, creating a flexible administrative penalty regime adapted to the local economic and financial circumstances of municipalities across Ontario, increased training of municipal integrity commissioners to enhance consistency of investigations and recommendations across the province, allow municipalities to apply to a member of the judiciary to remove a sitting member if recommended through the report of a municipal integrity commissioner, prohibit a member so removed from sitting for election in the term of removal and the subsequent term of office. And further, that this resolution be circulated to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Stephen Clark, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honorable Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MPP, Charmaine Williams, Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity, the Association of Municipalities, and all Ontario municipalities.
Thank you. You do like the wordy ones. Well done, though. Councillor Wheaton, would you like to speak to that?
I will make my efforts to be brief. It has been a long meeting, and I appreciate that this is the second time that this topic has been brought to this council, and I appreciate previous support for it. As you are aware, Bill 5, Stopping Harassment of and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, failed its second reading in the House, in the legislature on May 30th. When Premier Doug Ford was asked by the media why it was opposed, this is what he had to say. Well, we're going to come up with a different type of bill. We didn't necessarily agree with all the wording in that bill, but we'll make sure that if we put it there and we come up with a proper bill. That's what it comes down to. The wording of a proper bill. So the provincial government had plenty of time to suggest changes prior to the second reading, during debate, or once it's sent to committee. And in many ways, the Premier's response is a little bit of deflection. So we can continue to show our support for this important legislation by supporting this motion brought forward today, backed by Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which includes some really specific wording for the authors of the Premier's new bill to incorporate.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Tate?
Yeah, just through your worship, something similar that was done last term. I think Councillor Lauder brought it forward and disappointed that it didn't pass. And it was a MPP that brought it forward. So very disappointed in the Premier that this failed again. So this has been second term of this, which is unfortunate because we had issues last time and we couldn't do anything. So hopefully there's pressure put on the provincial government and they take it seriously. Because I think it's important to the taxpayers too, and people that vote people in. And when something happens, our hands are tied.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Wheaton?
I just want to say thanks to Councillor Tate for saying that, because I know that these private members' bills are very difficult to get pushed through. And I know we talked earlier in the meeting about sometimes correspondence just lands in a pile. But 167, the last I checked, have put forward support out of, no, 67 municipalities and local boards. And so there is a movement there. And it's just our opportunity to have our voices heard. Support for this goes a long way for those who have been advocating for a very long time to see this legislation put through.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments before I call the vote? I'll certainly be supporting this myself as well. This is something that's been discussed on numerous occasions, and hopefully moving forward, something the province will recognize that things do need to change. And with that, all those in favor? None opposed. That's unanimous, carried. Next up, we have draft bylaws. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer, that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading, 9608-23 through to 9613-23. No, okay. We tried. Let me try it again. Moved by myself, Councillor Leatherborough, seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer, that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading. 9608-23, a bylaw to provide for the stopping for the stopping up and closing of part of a highway. 9609-23, a bylaw to provide for the sale of certain lands owned by the Corporation of the City of Woodstock to 11447556 Canada Inc. 9610-23, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended. ZN 8-23-03-427 Norwich Ave. 9611-23, a bylaw to regulate vacant buildings within the city of Woodstock. 9612-23, a bylaw to provide for the temporary closing of certain streets. 2023 Street Fest. 9613-23, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 8626-10 as amended. ZN 8-22-22 northwest corner of Juliana Drive in Lampman Place.
Perfect. Well done. Thank you. Any questions or comments on those? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. Now, Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Shattenberg, that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading: 9608-23, 9609-23, 9610-23, 9611-23, 9612-23, 9613-23.
Thank you. Last chance. Any questions or comments? Call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. We did it. That was a good meeting tonight. And with that, we're going to start with Councillor Wheaton tonight.
I feel like you always start with me, but maybe that's
Well, I
just
can
my
start on the other side.
imagination.
Sorry.
I'm gonna, again, keep it short and sweet. I want to wish staff and my fellow counselors a bit of a break before we reconvene on August 10th. And I'll leave it at that for tonight.
Thank you. We're going to bounce. Councillor Tate tonight.
I'm also going to keep it short because we've had 2 long days of council meetings. I had enough, and I would just like to thank my fellow councilors that I never have to vote online school again.
Councillor Leatherborough.
I echo Councillor Wheaton's comments. Just hope everybody can have some downtime through the summer months because it's a bit of a lighter load, although it sounds like it's still very busy. And Street Fest is less than 2 weeks away. So as we've mentioned, a lot of businesses are coming out. I really hope everybody can come downtown. If you're in the city of Woodstock, it'll be a great BIA event.
Absolutely. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
I'm clocking out now and going on vacation, so I'm really going to keep this short and sweet and do pass along my regrets that I won't be able to attend Street Fest. Unfortunately, this year I will be away returning that time, but I wish everyone downtown all the best with that, and those that put all the hard work into it, have a wonderful time and enjoy the summer, my friends, because it will be gone before we know it. So just enjoy your time.
Have a good vacation. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. Again, from the Art Gallery. The Woodstock Art Gallery's new summer 2023 exhibitions opens on Saturday, July the 15th with an open house from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. The gallery's summer exhibition schedule is headlined by Visual Element 65 annual juried exhibition. The juried art show marks its 65th anniversary with a special exhibition in partnership with Woodstock sister city, Sylvania, Ohio, featuring work by 38 artists from Canada and the United States. We will be having several visitors here from Sylvania for the weekend. The event is free to everyone, so everyone is welcome. So, and see you at Street Fest, and don't forget to come out on Sunday to see the Southgate Cruise. It's happening, filling the Dundas Street with vehicles of all vintages, and I hope I don't have to judge them. So with that, have a great summer and see you in August.
And last but not least again, Councillor Shattenberg.
Just a reminder to check out some of the library events at mywpl.ca, mywoodstockpubliclibrary.ca. I wanted to mention them because I know they've got the Science-sational Snake Show, which is free, coming up on Wednesday, July the 19th at 2:30 in the afternoon. In fact, if it's nice weather, they'll be having the snake show outside, which would be ideal for the mayor to come by. Maybe he'll want to take some snakes home with him. And if you wanted to see that show before then, interestingly, the Piddock Conservation Area is actually hosting the same show Saturday at 1 p.m. That's this Saturday, so actually before the public library show. But there would be a fee for that one because it's at the rec center at UTRCA Piddock Conservation Area. So you'd have to pay the day fee to go inside the rec center area. One of the things I saw this past November was when they were taking the grass in the outfield out of the Tip O'Neill Sports Field, and I was worried. I mentioned to Brian Connors and Chris Kern and others in the Parks Department, worried about whether or not that outfield would be ready for ball season, but it certainly was ready for ball season. If you haven't been to the Tip O'Neill Sports Field this year to catch a baseball game, be sure to, because they've done a terrific job. And in fact, tomorrow at 7:30, the Woodstock Nationals, that's a men's team, plays Listowel. Woodstock Nationals men's baseball team is 6-0 on the year. They play in what's called the Midwestern Senior Baseball League, but go down to the Tip O'Neill Sports Field at any opportunity when there's minor ball going on, or this men's baseball team, to be able to see how fantastic that place looks now with the new backstop and the dugouts and everything else that's there.
Thank you. I too am heading out to Toronto in probably the next half hour. I'm going to volunteer again with the Honda Indy. I'm a proud member of their fire prevention team. So it's the Honda Indy this weekend. I'm gonna go have a lot of fun, and it's no secret I'm into cars. So being right beside all the race cars is kind of my thing. So 6:15 tomorrow morning AM is gonna come quickly, but that's our first safety talk. So and with that, I do have some great news. I've been wanting to share this for a long time, but I'm going to be a granddad. So finally been able to say it publicly, and I couldn't be happier. I've been wanting to say it at the top of my lungs. So my daughter's going to have a baby girl at the end of October. So I couldn't be happier. And I have a lot of people coming up and start asking me rumors, and the rumors are true. I'm going to be a granddad. So Sarah and I are really, really excited for that. We'll see everybody at Street Fest, I hope. I am going to be coming home. I'll be here for next weekend for Street Fest. I'll certainly see you there. See you August 10th at our next meeting. Enjoy your summer, everyone. Thank you so much. Be safe. And with that, looking for adjournment. Councillor Wismer Van Meer, second by Councillor Schattenberg. All those in favor, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Happy summer.